Metal Gear is one of those franchises that, love it or hate it, it's just plain fun to talk about. Part of the reason is that series creator Hideo Kojima has always invited an atmosphere full of speculation and mystery. The other part is that the fan base is crazy loyal. You add to that the wild popularity of the series, the split of Kojima and Konami, and the lack of much, if any, concrete information on the future of the franchise, and you get this perfect storm that feels like every other month there is a new news story or rumor regarding the next game coming or what past title is going to get a remake. It just so happens that this video series is all about answering what games do or do not deserve that remake treatment. Welcome back to AGR. I'm Zach, and on today's episode of Remake, Reboot, or Retire, we are going to be talking about the very first game in the Metal Gear franchise. I actually had a really hard time figuring out how to start this video. That's because I realized a lot of people didn't know what the first Metal Gear game was, and I couldn't figure out an elegant, entertaining, yet still quick way to explain it. So, I decided to just do it like pulling off a band-aid. The first Metal Gear game was released only in Japan for a Microsoft home computer system called the MSX2. This is important to know, especially if you live in the West, because we did receive a Metal Gear for NES. But this was a port with quite a few changes. The NES Metal Gear was pretty good though, and sold well, so Konami decided to greenlight a sequel that would only be released for us, called Snake's Revenge. Now, Snake's Revenge is a standalone sequel and has nothing to do with the rest of the series. In fact, it has since been completely removed from the Metal Gear timeline. So, why is it important that you know about these two games? Well, they are part of the first reason that I think this game needs a remake. Everything I just said happened in the late 80s. There was no internet with people talking across the world to let us know that the game we got in America was different from the MSX2 version, or that there even was an MSX2 Metal Gear. Western audiences didn't get the chance to play the original or its real sequel until the release of Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence in late 2005. That's almost 20 years after it was originally released, and even then, it was just bonus content for a special re-release of MGS3. Hell, I didn't know about it until I stumbled onto it in the Metal Gear Solid HD collection years after that, and I'm a huge Metal Gear fan. But with that first point out of the way, let's move on to talking about the actual game. The first thing I want to talk about, and arguably the most important aspect of any game, is the gameplay. Honestly, I'm surprised at how well Metal Gear has held up. If you read about the game's development, you hear how Kojima and the rest of the team had to make design decisions based on the limitations of the hardware. For example, the game was originally supposed to be an action shooter, but the MSX2 could only handle a small amount of enemies and bullets on screen at a time. Also, the system had limited scrolling capabilities, so a scrolling shooter like others popular at the time just wasn't working. Because of these limitations, Kojima got creative and decided to change the focus from an action game to more of a stealth game, where you mostly tried to avoid enemies. I was surprised at just how fun this game still was today. The hide-and-seek style of gameplay still keeps you on edge just as much as it did back when it was released. It's also really cool to see all the ideas that started here, that still continue in the series today, and for the most part, they don't feel outdated when playing the original. The idea of procuring your weapons on site, the use of the codec or radio, rations to heal yourself, and even the keycard system that almost every game still uses started here. That isn't to say it didn't have its problems though. The amount of menuing that you had to do to juggle all of the key items and weapons you obtained in the game was just a bit ridiculous. Also, the keycard system I mentioned was beyond frustrating at times, because you had to have the card equipped that matched the door you wanted to open, no matter what other cards you already found. So, if I had all the way up to card 6 and I found a new door, sometimes I would have to go into the menu and change to all 6 cards I had on me before one of them worked. Then I would try to memorize it just in case I needed that door again later. At times, it felt like they purposefully locked doors that would be the number you would least expect just to frustrate you. None of this was game-breaking or ruined it for me, but it would be great if they remade it to see this updated. The next reason is an obvious one, and that is the visuals. Graphics is one of the biggest reasons to remake a game, and Metal Gear is pushing 35 years old at this point. If PS4 games can be remade for PS5, then an MSX2 game from 1987 is definitely deserving of an overhaul. Also, I'm not sure if this falls under visuals or gameplay, but I would love to see this game in a more modern camera view. Whether that's still top-down but in 3D, like the PS1 and PS2 Metal Gear Solid games were, or if they go complete change and do an over-the-shoulder third-person view like Metal Gear Solid 5 was. Honestly, I like both styles, and either one would completely work if done correctly. Finally, the last, and for me, the biggest reason this game deserves a remake, which is the story. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to talk about the Metal Gear story really at all here, because 1, I don't care how old a game is, I hate spoilers more than anything. And 2, the Metal Gear story is so deep and intricate that it would take an hour-long video just to explain where this one fits into the timeline. What I am going to do is say that, for the time period, this game actually had a pretty decent standalone story. With a few exceptions, games in the late 80s usually didn't have much, if any, dialogue. Now, to be fair, this game still didn't have a lot. I think if you took all of the text in this game and just read it straight through, it would only take a few minutes to finish. However, all of the Metal Gear games that followed this one have gone back and retroactively added to the story. In doing so, they have expanded it to be much more than was ever told in the game itself. Because of this, for many Metal Gear fans, it feels like the events of this game are just legends you hear about in the other games, and not something we ever experienced. It would be amazing to see that legend realized, and it wouldn't even be too hard because all of the story material is already there and put together. Hell, if you go to the menu for Metal Gear Solid 1, you can read both of the first 2 games laid out in book format. They could just copy and paste that if they want to. So, if you made it this far, my final thoughts aren't going to surprise you. I think if any game in any series ever deserved to be remade, it's this one. Also, just for convenience sake, go ahead and throw its sequel, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, in as needing a remake also. I would do a separate video for it, but honestly, the videos would almost look exactly the same, just with different gameplay over my voice, because it suffered from the same exact problems of not coming overseas as this game did. Now, will we ever get a remake, or really any new Metal Gear games? That's a completely different question, and not one I can answer with certainty, but if I had to guess, I would say yeah, we will. Even though Kojima and Konami split, this franchise is much too big of a name and cash grabber to just let die. The only thing we can do is hope that whatever projects do pop up in the future, that they are put into capable and talented hands, and that we don't end up with another Metal Gear Survive. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed it because playing and talking about these older games is what I love to do most. And it's actually the reason I started the channel. If you have any thoughts on what I said, or you agree or disagree with any of it, please let me know in the comments down below. I absolutely love interacting with you guys. Finally, if you really liked it, you can always hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps out the channel and lets me know that you valued the content. But regardless of what you do, thanks for watching the video, and I will see you guys in the next one.